We're going to start with file item 2, and that is AB 885. Mr. Ammiano, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 885 by Assemblymember Ammiano, an act relating to criminal procedure.
Mr. Ammiano.
Thank you very much. Senate amendments have significantly narrowed this to include only willful, if I could have your attention, please, only willful or intentional acts of withholding evidence. Those are constitutional breaches. Furthermore, this bill now only says that where the intentional withholding of evidence has taken place, the court has the discretion to instruct a jury that may consider that in their evaluation of evidence. The bill does not require it. I mean, obviously, I would like a stronger bill, but this is something that's so important, particularly to our criminal justice system, that this narrowing of making the withholding of evidence intentional, only when it's intentional, and that the judge has the discretion, even with an intentional act of withholding evidence, the judge has the discretion whether or not to mention this in the evaluation of evidence. This week I met a 40-year-old man, Mr. Obie Anthony. Permission to show a prop?
Without objection.
This is Mr. Anthony. He may have visited you. He spent 17 years in prison because there was a withholding of evidence that could have cleared him. This is a picture of Mr. Anthony a few weeks ago when he was exonerated totally and proven innocent by the judge. 17 years in prison. So what I'm asking in this bill, as narrow as it is to prevent this kind of injustice to happen. It doesn't serve any of us well. And remember, please, that it would have to be an intentional withholding of evidence. For those of you who are lawyers or prosecutors know that withholding of evidence is allowable in certain circumstances, but this would be intentional and also would leave the judge with the discretion about how he wanted or she wanted to handle it. I ask humbly for an aye vote. Thank you.
Mr. Walkowski.
Madam Chair, I rise in support of AB 888. I believe that our system functions best when prosecutors are honest and we play the game honestly. I applaud the author for narrowing the bill to really weed out the most egregious acts that are happening within our system, where our court system depends on fair play. I also applaud the author. I believe this is his last bill here as a member of this body. The work that he has done in the criminal justice system and slowing the march to over-incarcerate people and trying to correct the injustice of the gentleman he noted after being wrongfully incarcerated for 17 years. This includes a long line of equitable measures that the gentleman from San Francisco has done, whether it's his transgender student rights work, his domestic workers, the Trust Act, Seth's Law, homeless, bullying, and the list goes on. The homeless issues will remain with us, and the criminal justice corrections will remain with us. I urge members on both sides of the aisle to vote aye on this measure.
Mr. Cork, you're recognized.
Just to commemorate Mr. Ammiano's last bill, I'd like to say I had certain trepidations about meeting Tom Ammiano. He was portrayed in the press as this wild man from San Francisco. And what I found is the person in the assembly with the best sense of humor and in many ways an exemplary chair. I hope I could be a chair of a committee and perform as well as Tom has. Tom is directive, but he's almost always right, or at least agrees with me. The Public Safety Committee is a difficult committee. It's one where Democrats and Republicans usually can't vote together. And it's one where we see as our charge to keep bills that lock them up and throw away the key out of the assembly. And that's what we do. Those are hard votes. But Tom with his sense of humor, all of us on the committee have learned to trust Tom's judgment. And I just want to be a chair someday like Tom has been a chair.
Mr. Emmanuel Perez.
Just like to ask members to go to the desk, please.
Point well taken. Mr. Fong, you are recognized. Mr. Fong, you are recognized.
I rise in support of AB 885, but more so in support of Tom Ammiano, my role model, a gay guy to a straight guy, but he's still my role model, and he's loved by my wife. He's my wife's favorite assembly member on the floor, and he's, when people speak about me in the same breath as Tom Ammiano, I am deeply honored by that. I'm so honored to be spoken in the same breath as Tom Ammiano because he is the most active social justice advocate on the floor, and I respect that to the hilt. And I love you, Tom, and I wish you the best. Thank you.
Ms. Skinner, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. This bill demonstrates the depth and the intelligence that Tom brings to his work as chair of the Committee on Public Safety, which I have had the privilege to serve under him in the entire time that he has been chair of that body. And also all of the work that he does in this House as an Assembly member. It has been my observation that Tom's skill as a legislator and his depth of understanding of the issues that he brings forward to us is often underestimated. You underestimate Mr. Ammiano at your peril. With Tom's departure, this House will never be as interesting, as funny, or as deep. Tom, we will miss you greatly. Everyone, vote yes on this bill.
Speaker Emeritus.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I too rise in support of AB 885. It is an incredibly well thought out measure that advances the cause of justice. As Mr. Ammiano mentioned, none of us are well served when somebody is inappropriately incarcerated, and create this new pathway to justice really is, as my colleague from Berkeley has just said, a great example of what it is that Mr. Ammiano's leadership has meant on the floor of this body. He has championed causes that others would steer away from. When he first got here, he asked to chair the Committee on Public Safety, a committee that is one of the most politically difficult committees to deal with, because you deal with such highly emotional, charged issues where the superficial conversation rarely captures the essence of how we advance safety and how we advance justice. And you engage in some of these conversations at your peril. And he has never shied away from dealing with the complexity of the issues to get to the right and just outcome. When you look at the set of bills that he's offered over the last 6 years, he has championed causes that others just really didn't want to have to deal with. He has spoken up for people that have no voice in the legislature but for Tom's voice. When he took on the issue of domestic workers, and it was ridiculed as babysitting bills, he sat there and met member by member to make sure that we understood what was really at stake for workers that have no voice and no right except for that which was created by the legislation that he authored. When he took on Homeland Security and the governor and many in law enforcement to make sure that we had a more rational approach to how we deal with folks in the immigration system, others were afraid to take on that battle. I had the honor to be with him twice in D.C., at the Department of Homeland Security and see him fight for just outcomes for people that, again, would have no voice without Tom. But I also rise as a very personal, on a very personal count, because I wouldn't be here without Tom Ammiano. I don't believe the Speaker would be here without Tom Ammiano. I don't believe that any of the members of the LGBT caucus of either house of the legislature, or quite frankly, our predecessors in this chamber, would be here without Tommy Ammiano. He is an absolute icon and treasure. When nobody talked about the issues of representation and inclusion of LGBT folks at every level of public service, whether it was an elective office or just working as a public servant, Tom was there in those early days of the fight. I first came to know who Tom Ammiano was 30 years ago, 20 years before I ever met him. I was a 14-year-old kid walking precincts for Walter Mondale. That didn't work out so well. And in the process, I met some people and heard about a film called The Times of Harvey Milk. It was just a few years after Harvey Milk's assassination, and I was invited to watch this film. And it was a powerful documentary about the reality of not only the assassination of Harvey Milk, but of the fight for representation for folks in the LGBT community in the political process. And there were two compelling voices in that film. One was clearly Harvey. The other was a school teacher and activist who they were interviewing named Tom Ammiano. And as a 14-year-old, before I knew for myself what my identity was, there was something about Tom's presence in that movie that just spoke to me and gave me a sense of inspiration. And to have met him then again in 2008 when I ran for office, and to sit down with him and to talk to him about all of the battles that he's been through, made my election seem more possible. Made my election not only to the legislature but to Speaker seem more possible. And Tom, you have opened the doors for so many people in all different facets of service. Elected office, to be sure, but your work in fighting the Briggs Initiative to make sure that everybody who is qualified can teach regardless of sexual orientation. Your championship for folks that have no other voice is just unparalleled, and I am so privileged to have been able to spend these last 6 years serving with you, and I just have to tell you how much I love and appreciate you, Tom.
Classic Ammiano. Ms. Yamada, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I, too, rise in support of AB 885. And knowing Tom as I have known him, we came in as freshmen together, I can tell right now already that he is not necessarily wanting all this to take place here on the floor. Yes, see? But I will just say this. When we arrived here, we began a little tradition of the annual beginning of session mochi exchange. And I'm not going to explain what mochi is to those of you who don't know. Get some cultural competence and look it up. But I just will say that I look forward to continuing our mochi exchange by attending the Mochitsuki with you in San Francisco. George Yamada, who is the same name as my father, who passed away so many, many years ago. It's sort of an interesting legacy to continue. So I will see you in the city. Thank you, Tom.
Mr. Alejo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I rise out of respect for the legendary Tom Ammiano. California is losing one of its greatest elected officials in California history. But I know There's many great things up ahead for Tom, and I hope to see him back here eventually. But Tom has really been a champion for the underdog. This bill says it all. A bill or a situation where a person would be deprived of his or her liberty for a crime they could not commit and be incarcerated for 17 years just shows you who Tom stands up for. Society might have just locked him up and thrown away the key, but there were people here at the Capitol in Sacramento, like Tom Ammiano, that were being a voice for those very people. And on many other Californians as well. But I, too, about 2 years ago, I probably saw many years later after the Speaker Emeritus, I was sitting at home and I turned on cable TV. I don't know if it was HBO or Showtime, but they were airing this historic documentary of the early organizing efforts of the LGBT community in San Francisco. And it showed the images leading up to the assassination of Harvey Milk, who was a good friend of Mr. Ammiano. And in that documentary, it highlighted the events that happened during that time and the situation and the oppression that the LGBT community was facing in the San Francisco Bay Area. And when I saw that image, I couldn't help but feel so honored and proud that I was serving with this legendary figure of California politics. And this place will not be the same without you, Tom. You brought humor. I think every caucus we had, you made all of us laugh. And you made this job more fun and more enjoyable. But we all knew that when you had a bill, we did not want to get on your bad side either, because you fought hard for your cause, for your bill and your constituents. That's why the people of the Bay Area love Tom Ammiano. I just want to really thank you for looking after the Latino community as well. As the author of the Trust Act, a landmark piece of legislation that is really going to go a long way to stop the deportations of so many mothers and fathers from being separated from their children, their loved ones, for doing no crime at all or something so minor that it doesn't merit being separated from your children. And you stood up for our community. And that's why I've always been honored to call you Tomas or Tomasillo out of love for what you stand for, brother. And I want to say our communities have a lot to thank Tom Ammiano, and this place will never be the same without you, my friend.
Mr. Dickinson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think we all are well acquainted with Tom's wit and his one-liners. We all are entertained and enjoy them immensely. But what sets Tom apart is, behind that wit is the heart of a person who not just empathizes with those who are too often left behind, overlooked, disenfranchised, but who identifies with them, who has literally walked a mile in their shoes. And I can only think that the best thing that I can offer is to say, Tom, every legislative body needs a Tom Ammiano. Thank you.
Ms. Bonilla.
Well, Tom, certainly once a teacher, always a teacher. And I say that as a teacher myself. And I think one of the most respected callings that anyone can have. And you have fulfilled that calling here in this House as well. And we've talked about how you've taught with your humor. And that is certainly very true. And I would just say, from the bottom of my heart, Tom, the courage that you have exhibited in your lifetime is an incredible testament to the deep caring that you have for those around you. Because you've been courageous not just for yourself, but you've been courageous for many, many other people who may never have the honor of meeting you. And you've been courageous here in this House. And I want to say that that's one of the lessons I've had the privilege of learning from you. It has been a deep honor to sit in your classroom, Mr. Ammiano, and I have learned lessons that have changed me, and I have deep, deep respect for you. Thank you so much for being willing to serve, being willing to teach from the depths of your being, from your heart, and you're in my heart now. Thank you so much.
Mr. Jones Sawyer.
You know, when I first got here, I did not want to be on public safety, and when they told me I was on public safety, I said, "You mean with the little comedian?" And my staff said, "You have no idea what it's like to be on Tom Ammiano's committee." And in this corner, everybody here knows when you're in earshot of Tom Ammiano, you learn some very creative ways to use four-letter words, gay jokes that are totally inappropriate, and a lot of other comments that I would get in a lot of trouble if I were to mention right now. But what I've learned from Tom Ammiano, and I'm a Democrat. People kind of describe me as liberal. I try to say I'm in the middle, whatever. But I also learned a new definition for liberal. There's like liberal, there's progressive, you can be a socialist, then you can be a communist, and then there's Tom Ammiano. And being way to the left of Tom Ammiano, I don't think exists. But I think it needs to exist, especially in this House. We need to always have that voice. And that's what I appreciate about Tom. When we tackle African American issues, Tom has better ideas sometimes than I do about how we need to move the ball. When it comes to public safety, I didn't know anything about prisons, thank God. But Tom taught me not only what the problem was there in the SHU and sentencing and things of that nature, it now made me more involved and to put in laws to move forward, even though knowing that it may not be the most popular thing. And so, Tom, I'm glad and I'm honored to have served with you, but more important, I'm glad you allowed me to ask questions that sometimes you may have thought I may have been a little homophobic, but you've given me that space to ask questions and to answer it and not to make assumption that I was thinking a certain way. And I really, really, really do appreciate that. I really do appreciate the ability to have that honesty, that great honesty to be able to discuss things in any way, shape, or form. But the thing I'm going to miss most, and I think that I hope that all of us in here kind of take into our hearts, is being, just this term being a fearless fighter. We're all fighters in here, but are we actually fearless? To take on an issue like marijuana and cannabis, to take on the issue of incarceration and sentencing, things that a lot of us, if we went back to our constituents, they would have a little problem with. To take all those calls, that's when you are a fearless fighter. And we're really, really going to miss that. And I appreciate everything that I've learned, even the jokes. But most important, your friendship. Thank you.
Mr. Bradford, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I, too, rise in support of AB 885, and as the chair of the Select Committee on Boys and Men of Color, this is a critical issue of making sure our criminal justice system is fair and equitable, and this bill goes a long ways to addressing those concerns. Just on Wednesday, I had opportunity to meet Mr. Anthony, the young man that Mr. Ammiano referred to, who's helped frame this bill. And after spending 17 years falsely accused and incarcerated, he had no bitterness in his heart. His only concern was to make sure that no one else fell into this trap that he did, and hiding or failing to disclose evidence. So if our criminal justice system is ever to be the institution that we all hope and say it is, if it's ever going to have the integrity, we need this bill. But more importantly, we need more Tom Ammianos who will fight to make sure that our court system is just, to make sure that our criminal justice system is just. A true warrior, as our colleagues have stated, a true champion, a fearless champion of civil rights and all rights for all people. Dr. King once stated that the arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. Tom, you're that arc. Thank you.
Mr. Ting.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I also rise in support of AB 885, but more importantly also to pay homage to my colleague from San Francisco. I think many of you have heard or have talked about his legislative accomplishments, but I don't think any of you can truly appreciate what Tom Ammiano means to the city and county of San Francisco. I think the Speaker Emeritus sort of touched on it a little bit, but I don't think it's too hard to say that there would be no LGBT movement in our city if there was no Tom Ammiano. I don't think it would be too far to say that there would be no progressive movement without Tom Ammiano. That the fight in our times, especially as our city has very much prospered and very much done very well relative to even most places in California, we're having a debate about who gets to stay in our city, much like who gets to stay in our state, and whether we're a city of only haves or whether we're going to do something for the have-nots. And that voice, for over 40 years, that clarion voice to fight for homeless folks, to fight for tenants, to fight for immigrants, to fight for anyone who doesn't have a voice, has been Tom. Whether it was his time on the school board, whether it's his time on the Board of Supervisors, or whether it was his time here in the Assembly, he is the leader of that movement. He's proven that he has followers. He did something amazing a number of years ago. We all know about Speaker Willie Brown, and we also know about Mayor Willie Brown. Well, Mayor Willie Brown was coasting to a relatively easy re-election. The filing deadline had passed and seemed like he had it all sewn up. But the people who really follow Tom, the people who Tom represents, decide to draft Tom into the mayor's race. And what was extraordinary, and we all have to run for office, and we know how hard it is to get people to cross that box or check that box or mail in that ballot. Tom Ammiano got into that mayor's runoff as a write-in candidate. As a write-in candidate. And we all know how hard it is to write Ammiano. and absolutely forced Mayor Brown into a runoff. But it isn't really just that I think separates Tom. It's the fact that he led the wave of the progressive supervisors into office in 2000 with the rebirth of district elections. It's really the fact that we have a city where people who represent tenants, people who represent the homeless, people who represent immigrants, they get us listened to as our chamber, as our corporations, as the people who have all the money and all the wealth in our town. And that's because of Tom. So I know that this may be his last time on this floor, but I have no doubt that he has many offices ahead and many adventures ahead. And again, as always, I look so forward to seeing you back home in San Francisco and just saying that we love you, Tom.
Ms. Buchanan.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I also rise in support of AB 885, and I have to say the first time I heard your name, Tom, was in that runoff election, because as you know, I was born and raised in San Francisco, and even though I live about 28 miles east of the city now, I still follow San Francisco politics, and I was just in awe that you could do so well as a write-in against Willie Brown. And I think it shows the love and the respect and the admiration the people of the city of San Francisco have for you. And it's that same love, admiration, and respect that all of us now here in the legislature, and I think people here in Sacramento have for you, because to get to know you, I think, is to love you. And you and I represent different districts. We haven't agreed on 100% of the issues, but I respect you as much as anybody in this chamber. You're someone who is always true to your core values. You're someone who, as many people say, is a champion for those people who don't have a voice, trying to ensure that we do have justice and equality for every resident in this state. You're someone who has fought hard on LGBT issues, and I think, if there's anything that happens as we get a little bit older, it's really nice to be able to look back sometimes and see how far we've come and the difference that those efforts have made. So I'm going to miss you. I hope I get to see you at some of the Giants games, the team that both of us love so much, and we'll see if we get lucky enough and they make the playoff this year. But I just want to thank you for all you've done and for being Tom Ammiano. I love you.
Mr. Chesbrough.
I, too, rise in support of AB 885, and also to honor my friend Tom Ammiano. Tom, I didn't meet you that long ago, really, but I've known about you and your reputation and your legendary role in San Francisco and throughout the region for many, many decades. We weren't that far apart, a few hundred miles apart, but news of Tom Ammiano was regularly there, and I was thrilled to be able to run and get elected at the same time as you and serve for the last 6 years with you. Reference has been made to the many causes and folks who don't have champions, who you've championed. I want to mention one because it's been a pretty lonely place, and you and I and maybe one or two other members disagree with this entire floor on it, but it's an example. You believe, and I believe, that people with mental illness have rights, have civil rights. They're human beings, and we don't just get to incarcerate them because we're scared of them and because some people with mental illness have done some terrible things. And you have consistently taken that stand. I know it's a lonely stand because I felt pretty lonely taking that stand myself. But it's an example of one that is principled. You're not on the winning side, but it's a heartfelt stand, and I think it really reflects who you are as an individual. And then finally, I just want to say thank you, as everybody has, for making us laugh. I said yesterday on the floor, and I'm going to say it again, my dad, one of my dad's most memorable things he taught me was that if you don't laugh, you'll cry, so you better keep laughing. And you've made us laugh. You've gotten me in trouble because I've made the mistakes frequently of sitting next to you in caucus. And what a lot of people don't realize, unless you really spend some time sitting next to him, is that for every joke that he says out loud, he has about 10 or 15 that he's not saying. I mean, his mind just moves so fast, and the humor is just constantly there. So he'll say something that strikes me as particularly funny, but that's politically correct for him to say, not for me, and I'll blurt it out, and get myself in some big trouble. And I have to point out to everybody that Tom said it, and I'm just repeating it. So, in any case, he's truly a delight as a friend, truly remarkable as a leader, and I just want to join in the accolades and the tribute and say thank you so much for your public service, not just in this House, but over the many years that you have been a leader in so many great ways.
Mr. Gordon.
I rise in support of AB 885, and to say just simply this to my colleague Tom Ammiano. Tom, you cannot leave, because now I'm going to be the old gay guy.
Mr. Speaker,
Point of parliamentary inquiry. Wouldn't I be correct to assume that Mr. Gordon already was the old gay guy?
Point not well taken. Dr. Pan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, members. I, too, stand in support of this important bill, and I want to, again, I, too, want to recognize and thank Tom Ammiano for your friendship and your grace and humor, your very sharp humor. Certainly, I think all of us will miss this here, although I know you'll be continuing to make your very wry and very insightful comments back in San Francisco and ongoing. And I also want to thank you for how much you teach all of us. Certainly taught me. There are people who are in your advocacy. You're not strident in your advocacy. You are educational in your advocacy, and certainly, and I really appreciate our conversations. I've learned so much every time we talk, and I appreciate that time you invited me to San Francisco to look at the health clinics and health systems, and certainly I'm going to continue to take those lessons and figure out what we can try to do in that regard. I also just, you are the conscience of this body. You are a conscience. Like a good conscience, you make us uncomfortable, and that's a very important thing. And even this bill perhaps is making some of us uncomfortable, but you speak out clearly about why we need to do these things to ensure there's justice and equality. And I just want to, again, thank you so much for everything you've done and for your friendship. And I hope to continue to work with you in whatever endeavors that you decide to move forward on in the future, but that we can still continue to work together and things. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Ms. Weber, you're recognized.
Yes, Madam Speaker and members, I too rise in support of AB 885 and obviously in tribute to my good friend Tom Ammiano. It's been really quite an honor for me to meet you, Tom, because I had heard about you in San Diego when we were fighting a number of the issues with regards to bullying and those kinds of things. And you always heard this name, Tom Ammiano, in the Bay Area. And so I was just honored to be able to meet you. I'd also heard your name because Willie Brown is a very good friend. And I'd also heard about this guy who made Willie Brown look conservative. And in comparison. And so I always thought, who in the world could that be? And obviously it was Tom Ammiano. But one of the things I find so great about you, Tom, is that I'll go into any battle with you, because so often people who go into battle get weak-kneed, get scared, and run. And you don't do that. You stay the course. And so I always feel good that you've got our back, you advocate for everyone, and you're a steady force that's there. You also show me what it really is to be free, to truly be free. And most of us don't know that because we constantly put our finger to the wind and try to figure out the direction to go of least resistance. We're constantly trying to figure out who our supporters are and who's financing us and who's doing all those things. And you don't. You are completely free. And that, I think, is a goal that we all strive for, to be in a position where our values are so clear, our love and our passion for life is so deep, and the people we believe in we want to fight for so strongly, that we really are in a zone kind of on our own, dragging everybody else along with us, but clear about where we want to go and how to get there. And so I thank you for showing me what freedom really is, to be free to be yourself, to be free to love those around you, to be free to be a diverse person. We all know you as this gay guy here, but I also know from conversation that you're a great-grandfather, that you really love your grandkids and your kids and your family. And sometimes that gets lost in all the other stuff. And yet when I have conversations with you, that's what we really talk about. You as a person, your love for life, your love for your family. And I just am honored to have you as a friend. You're leaving this house, but you will never leave my heart or my life. Thank you so very much.
Mr. Cooley.
I rise to speak to my colleague Tom Ammiano. As a member of this freshman class, I have a great passion about this institution, the future of this institution. And I'm just so grateful for having had the opportunity to serve with Tom Ammiano. You know, we come up here, we pop up in this legislative environment, and the real question is, how do we grow ourselves to be the equal of this great constitutional role we have as individuals? And when I look at Tom Ammiano, I see and am reminded that the raw material of our careers is who we are the day we first took our oath of office. It's the life experiences, and it's who we are walking in that we then, over a span of time, grow and grow and grow and expand. I think Tom Ammiano is a very important figure for the freshman class to have known. As we, through the action of our voters, we have more time, opportunity to serve. And yet this example of how you have been yourself, you've expressed yourself, you know, the lawmaker in full, you know, Tom Ammiano, who came here, has just grown and grown and grown and have an impact. And I think it's it is a very important example as we look to grow the co-equal status of the legislature beyond the term limited era, the role model you offer for every member on this floor in terms of how you express your individuality, your advocacy, your values. We're all enriched in our class to have served alongside you. And I think of all the turmoil with the federal courts and the prisons and all the things that came through on your watch. I think you are a great role model for the future of this institution, and we're fortunate to serve with you.
Mr. Medina.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Keeping with the educational theme of Ms. Bonilla and Dr. Pan, as a former teacher, I heard this saying, that students don't care how much you know. They want to know how much you care. And although I've only been here 2 years, and I don't know the whole history of this House, I know that there is no person who has ever served in this House who has a bigger heart than Mr. Ammiano. No one in this House is more a gentleman than Mr. Ammiano. I am proud to call Mr. Ammiano my friend, and I will miss him.
Ms. Brown.
I rise in support of AB 885. And there was a man named Geronimo Pratt who spent 27 years in prison. Johnny Cochran was his defense attorney. And he spent those years in prison because someone hid the information that would have freed him. The information was there. It took a young man who wasn't even born to find the information whenever he became a law clerk. This bill would have saved those 27 years for Geronimo Pratt, and it would have saved Johnny Cochran a lot of heartache because he ached because of this. This bill is a good bill, and I hope everyone in here will support it. Tom Ammiano, dang those term limits. We should not have term limits when we have people like Tom Ammiano in this House. He's smart. He's funny. He's a little taller than I am. He additionally is understanding. He has helped me to understand a myriad of issues. He's patient. And as you said, he's a teacher. But he's also a wonderful, wonderful advocate, not only for his issues, but if there's an issue that you have and he can help you to advocate for that issue, he's there for you. He additionally loves each one of us, and I feel that love all the time. But I really know that Tom Ammiano loves me more than he loves any of the rest of you. Thank you.
Mr. Marisucci.
Thank you. I did not want to miss this opportunity to express my love and respect for Tom Ammiano. Tom, you and I know that I don't always vote for your bills. But I want to express my genuine respect for you on all the work that you do. You may not remember, but I think I once shared with you that I got my start in politics as a civil rights activist in your town, San Francisco. And this was in the early 90s, and that was when I heard about this legend that this stand-up comedian that was running for the San Francisco School Board, I believe, at that time. And then, fast forward like more than 20 years later, I was sitting where Mr. Jones Sawyer is now sitting on my first day of my service as a state assembly member.
And I remember thinking, wow, I'm sitting on the same floor in front of Tom Ammiano. And so, and I was all nervous and excited. It was my first day. And you helped me feel a little bit more comfortable when you shouted out, when the speaker was being resworn as a speaker for the new session, "God save the Queen." And I thought, wow, this is going to be an interesting place to work. But Tom, thank you for making this place a special place. It's been a special experience to be able to work with you. And I will always be proud to be able to say that I served in the California State Assembly with a legend named Tom Ammiano.
Mr. V. Manuel Perez.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I too rise in support of AB 885, but I also rise in support of my good friend Tomas, my good friend Tommy. Let me just say, Tom, thank you for what you stand for and for fighting on the issue of civil rights for all people. You've taught me a lot, especially coming from the desert and coming from an area where, quite frankly, many times issues when it pertains to the LGBT community is not talked about. It's taboo in the Latino community many times. But you've taught me quite a bit as to how I myself can continue to fight for all folks, as well as those that are members of the LGBT community. Especially in Cathedral City and Palm Springs, you might not know this, but they love you out there. And you're in San Francisco. They know who you are. And so I just want to say thank you for all the work that you've done. You are a true champion of social justice, the opposite of injustice, the opposite of the oppression, of the exploitation of one group of people over another, the exploitation and suppression of one individual over another. And rather than that, you fight for fairness, liberty, justice, equity, equality. I appreciate that. I want to thank your staff, too. Your staff does a great job. And I appreciate your staff for the work that they do on your behalf. And so, Tomas, yesterday, Madam Speaker, permission to use a prop?
Without objection.
Yesterday, Tomas, you mentioned that I can whip you anytime. Tomas, would you like to be my huckleberry?
Okay, Mr. Bocanegra, you have to follow that one.
How do you follow that? I rise in support of the author of 885, and I just very quickly wanted to let Mr. Ammiano know how great it has been to work with you this past year on AB 2372. We've got to really work together and I think know each other because of that issue. Quick story. So I was in your district earlier this year at the Wayfair Tavern, had dinner, and the waiter brings a check, I pay for it, comes over and says, "You're the guy working with Tom Ammiano on that bill. I want to thank you for that." And I think that just reminded me again of the shadow that you cast, not just in your district, but throughout this state. And let me just say, one of the big reasons I wanted to work with you on that change of ownership bill is not because it's a righteous issue, because it is, not because it's closing a loophole on some of the very obscene abuses that happen sometimes in the financial sector. I wanted to work with you, and I wanted to get it done for you, Tom. And I'm sorry that I came up short, but let me just say this. You leave a tremendous body of work, and there are some of us here, myself included, who will continue to fight and to carry on that mantle. Thank you so much.
Assemblymember Eggman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I rise in support of AB 885. I didn't vote for it for the first time around, but what the hell. It's your last bill. It has been my pleasure and honor to serve with you. And as the Speaker said, nobody in the LGBT caucus would be here if not for you. You paved the way for all of us, and we all owe you a huge debt of gratitude. I appreciate your service, and that at your core you remain little Tommy Ammiano, the Catholic boy from Jersey, who made his way out here to help us all live the American dream. And I appreciate that sometimes we even dress alike. It's made me feel part of this body with you. And I appreciate now when anybody says a word that can be adolescently turned into something nasty, I think it, and I think of you. I'll try to keep it to myself. But again, we all owe you a great debt of gratitude, and I love you and thank you.
Ms. Harkey.
Thank you. I am probably going to rise in opposition to your bill, Tom, but never in opposition to you. I want to tell you that I am the right of the right in Orange County. I'm Orange County female, woman. You are the left of the left, the San Francisco liberal gay guy. When we first got together on this, and when we actually came in the same class together, I think there was an immediate gravitation because, we were very, very different. But also, I loved your humor. Your humor was truly unique. Now, I have found through many of the people say that you taught us a lot. Well, I learned a lot through your humor that I never knew before. And I will tell you that, we couldn't, I don't think for the first couple of years I could vote for any of your bills. But I know that I've rubbed off on you because last week you actually had a bill that we supported unanimously. So you're going right, Tom. And I'm probably going a little bit left, too. So thank you very much for having known you. Thank you for being a friend. I always call you Tommy. I don't call you anything but Tommy. And I'm glad to know that you are Tommy from Jersey. Because that's always been your name with me, and I look forward to seeing you on the outside world, doing other things together, and thank you very much for your friendship. Thank you for your humor. I'm probably one of the few people that ever told you to shut up, Tommy, but you took that well, and I always appreciate the levity and the good spirits that you brought to this floor, and I'm very, very, I think I'm a better person for having known you. Thank you very, very much.
Ms. Conway is our last speaker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thomas, you were quoted in the blogs again the other day about the shoe thing, so I felt I just needed to explain one more time. When we came in as freshmen, the SACB did a little article on the 5 freshmen to watch. It was the Speaker Emeritus, little Bobby Blumenfeld, as I lovingly called him. Little Jimmy, you took his place. Where are you? Tom Ammiano, myself, and that semi-famous guy, Nathan Fletcher. And the reporter says to me, well, I hear you're friends with Ammiano. How could that be? And I said, well, his office is across the hall from mine. We have camaraderie. But, how can you even talk to him? What could you politically possibly have to say? Oh, politically we're not close. Well, then what is the basis of the friendship? I said, well, and even with our politics, I admire his earrings, and he admires my shoes. We get along famously. That was actually quoted in the article. So, Tom, in addition to shoes and earrings, the fact that we've had an opportunity to serve in this great place has meant so much to me. And without your humor and a few other private conversations we've had, this world wouldn't have been such a happy place for all of us. So I just appreciate you, and you know that. And I'd give you my blessing, but I'm not authorized. Thanks so much. Love you, Tom.
Mr. Ammiano, This is your time to close.
Well, thank you all so very much. And Manny, I'll meet you at Burning Man on Sunday. And thank you for mentioning my staff, because they've been a joy to work with. Can't always say that. They might say the same thing about us when we're under pressure, but without them, a lot of the good stuff that happened over the 6 years would not have happened. So thank you very much, staff, both in Sacramento and in San Francisco. I did mention that when you're my age, you're very grateful that you can be around to hear all this rather than as a eulogy. So that means a lot. I have a great deal of affection and respect. It's really been an honor, and I've learned a lot as well. And that rumor about me joining a boy band is not true. So I would very much like it if you would vote aye on this bill. It's an important bill to me and to many, many people in the criminal justice system. So thank you very much, and I request an aye vote.
Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 45, no 17. Senate amendments are concurred in. File item 3, AB 1656. Mr. Dickinson. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1656 by Assemblymember Dickinson, an act relating to the Department of General Services.
Mr. Dickinson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The bill, AB 1656, is back from the Senate for concurrence. I've regaled you a number of times in the past about